further, to everybody who is online, a very warm welcome to the Sunday Global Lectures on Intellectual History of the Ismaili Tariqa. Today, before our speaker, RIYAZ MOMIN, starts, Dr. Saib, as usual, will say a short prayer to seek the Nurani guidance and help of Imam-e-Zaman Nur Maulana Shah Karim al-Husseini. Hazar Imam.
Nur Maulana Shah Karim al-Husseini. Hazar Imam. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Hasbunallah wa ni'mal wakeel wa ni'mal mawla wa ni'mal nasir. Hasbunallah ونعم الوكيل ونعم المولى ونعم النصير حسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل نعم المولى ونعم النصير نصير الحي القيوم نصير الحي القيوم نصير الحي القيوم إلهي شرعي شرعكم إلهي شرعي بشرعكم إلهي رحمتي ببندگانكم إلهي رحمتي ببندگانكم إلهي رحمة الدريا إلهي رحمة الدريا يا مس وزجا قطري مرا تمامس وزجا قطري مرا تمامس گناهداری بیش از کوه الوان گناهداری بیش از کوه الوان گناه از بنده و عفو خداوند گناه از بنده و عفو خداوند خداوند سعادت یاری ما کن خداوند سعادت یاری ما کن زرحمت یک نظر در کاری ما کن زرحمت یک نظر در کاری ما کن یا اکرم الاکرمین یا ارحم الراحمین یا نور مولانا شاه کریم الحسینی حاضر امام.
Shukran lillah walhamdulillah, shukran lillah walhamdulillah. Our speaker today, RIYAZ MOMIN, doesn't really need an introduction again because he has already presented on this series of Zoom lectures. So we will ask him to do his presentation. He's already shared his screen, and we wish him to tell us more about this book, Gushayish wa Rahayish of Hakim bin Nasir Khisraw'S, and which has been translated quite loosely as Knowledge and Liberation. And it has been published by the IIS. So the stage is all yours, Riyaz.
Thank you, Rashida Appa. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Asmani ilmu hikmat nur Maula na kareem. Asmani ilmu hikmat nur Maula na kareem. Badshah takht izzat nur Maula na kareem. Our distinguished scholars, Bahrul Ulum, Dr. Fakir Muhammad Hunzai Sahib, Samsame Ilmi Alwaiza Rashida Nur Muhammad Hunzai Sahiba, and all our Ilmi friends and all our spiritual brothers and sisters online. Ya Ali Madad. With Maulana Hazim Imam's luminous ta'eed and everyone's prayers, I will present my book review on Gushayish wa Rahayish. When I think about reading a good religious book, it reminds me of a hadith of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, in which Prophet said, "Inna Allaha jamilun yuhibbul jamal," which means God is beautiful and He loves beauty. In my humble understanding of its inner meaning, it can be interpreted that Allah also loves the spiritual and intellectual beauty, which we can develop by reading some of the books recommended by the Imams, Peers, and Hujjats and Dais, and also to engage in a regular zikr wa ibadat. This would be our outline for today's session, introduction of the book, Life and Work of Hakim Pir Nasir Khisraw. Then we will look at table of contents, and we will discuss some of the selected questions, references, and after that, Q&A. This book, Gushayish wa Rahayish, was originally written in Persian by our esteemed Pir Nasir Khisraw and translated into English as Knowledge and Liberation, a treatise on philosophical theology by Dr. Fakir Muhammad Hunzai Sahib and introduced by Professor Parvez Murwaj Sahib. This book was published by the Institute of Ismaili Studies, London in 1998, and this book was reprinted in 2011. However, before we study this book's contents in detail, let us first look at the life and work of Hakim Pir Nasir Khisraw. Hakim Pir Nasir Khisraw was a famous 11th century sage, author, poet, philosopher, and traveler. His full name was quite of a little bit difficult, but I got that. Abu Muk in Hamiduddin Nasir bin Khusro bin Hirati, Kubadiani, and Yungani. He was born in 1004 in Kubadian and died in Yungan after 1076. Hakim Nasir moved from his hometown Balkh to Yungan due to persecution against him, and majority of his dawa work was done from Yungan, as Dr. Saib explained to us in detail about his life and work in previous session. And here it is interesting to note that from in his divan he wrote regarding Yungan, and he wrote, "So long as a sage like me is here, Yungan is the mine of knowledge, intellect, and wisdom. Right here in Yungan is the school of wisdom for you. Seek it not in Balkh or Bukhara." Let us look at his education. From his youth, Sayyidina Nasir Khisraw was very brilliant. He memorized the entire Quran at the age of 9 and studied various literature such as philosophy, astronomy, jurisprudence, etc. He was also well versed in Arabic, Turkish, Hebrew, and Greek, etc. Even though he studied 300 exegesis of the Quran and had acquired a lot of worldly knowledge, he was not satisfied. And Hakim Nasir Khusro realized that he needs to improve his life after having a dream in which a sage said to him, and I quote, "Never has drunkenness brought peace of mind. Can one who leads people to stupor be called a sage? Seek that which increase intellect and wisdom." Nasir asked, where can I find such a thing? The sage replied, "Those who shall find," and then pointing in the direction of the Qibla. So after this dream, his life was transformed, and Hakim Pir Nasir Khusro, as you can see here, that he started the journey for 7 years. And in this particular journey, first he reached to Makkah and performed Hajj, but he didn't find anything over there. And he reached Cairo after that, where he met with his teachers, Sayyidina Al-Mu'izzuddin Shirazi, who became his teacher and who logically answered all the queries of Hakim Nasir Khusro. And Hakim Nasir Khusro regarded his teacher as Rizwan, which translates to the warden of paradise. And Sayyidina Al-Mu'izzuddin Shirazi guided him to meet with Imam Mustansir-Billah I, which inspired Pir Nasir Khusro to do the bayat of Imam. And after having the Imam's didar, he expressed his feeling in his diwan, and he wrote, "Barjane man chunure imami zaman vitaf, lailus sarar budamo shamsuz zuha shudam." When the light of the Imam of the time shone upon my soul, even though I was dark as night, I became the glorious sun. Supreme name is the Imam of the time by which I ascended, Venus light from the earth to heaven. And from that, Imam Mustansir-Billah alayhi salam appointed him as the Hujjati Jazira Khurasan, the proof of the land of Khurasan. And he is known as Hazrat Pir or Sayyid Shah Nasir Khusro in various parts of the world, such as Badakhshan, Afghanistan, China, Chitral, and northern areas of Pakistan, etc. And if we look at this term, Hujjat, it's also very interesting to read in ALWAAZ Rashida Sahiba's article that the Ismailis believe the pure genus of the peas, which is in Arabic is Hujjat, and is also due to the fact that they are the highest personnel in the Hudud-e-Din or religious hierarchy after the Imam, as they receive ta'id or spiritual help. Through Imam's ta'id, spiritual help, he wrote many books. Hakim Nasir Khusro's work is extensively on two aspects. We would say rather on three aspects, prose, poetry, and his Safarnama. To give a quick overview of some of his work, for instance, Zadul Musafirin devotes most of his discussion to the human soul, that is the journey of the soul traveling through this physical world to salvation in the spiritual world. In Jami'ul Hikmatin, Pir Nasir Khusro contributes to the larger medieval goal of combining two wisdoms of philosophy and religion, specifically Greek philosophy and religion. And in this book, he gives responses to many questions related to philosophy, and his answer and his response was with philosophy and with Ismaili doctrine. In Wajidin, he provides esoteric meaning, ta'wil of a variety of religious regulations and rituals giving the inner batini meaning of certain external zahir of a religion. And some examples of his poetic work are Roshnai Nama, the Book of Enlightenment, Saadat Nama, Book of Happiness. Here we would like to offer our appreciation to some of the scholars, writers, researchers, translators, and editors who have translated Sayyidina Nasir's work into English and other languages. Some examples would be Russian scholar Ivano has translated Shish Fasal, which means sixth chapter in English. Professor Eric has translated Nasir Khisraw'S Kitab Jamal Hikmatain as Between Reason and Revelation, Twins Wisdom Reconciled. A German Orientalist scholar, Annemarie, has provided an English translation of some of the Pir's Nasir Khisraw'S poems from his divan. You can see some of the images of the translated English and Urdu books of Sayyidina Nasir Khisraw. You can see Wajiddin translated into Urdu by Allama Nasiruddin Nasir Hunzai Sahib. And this book is currently being translated into English as Face of Religion by Dr. Faqir Muhammad Hunzai Sahib and Dr. Shafiq Virani Sahib. In addition, the Gujarati translation of Wajiddin is done by Gulami Abbas from Bombay in 1991. Our main focus today is to discuss the book Gushayish wa Rahayish, which constitutes Pir Nasir Khisraw response to a series of 30 inquiries on philosophical and theological questions put to him by a member of the Ismaili Dawa. And most of the questions are concerned with the human soul, its relation to the world of nature, and its quest for salvation in the next world. They discuss whether the soul is a substance or whether it has been created, and how a person can know about God and his work. And in addition to that, about the authenticity of the Quran, there is also debate in this particular topic and many others. And he presented succinct version of his understanding of Fatimi doctrine on each of the topics. The question in this book are from 5 major themes, as you can see here, such as cosmogony, ontology, physics, theology, and theodicy. There are total 224 pages, including English and Persian sections. There was an index for general and technical terms in the back of this book. There are also 2 articles by Professor Parvez Murwaj in this book. I learned that Hakim Pir Nasir Khisraw had solve all the questions with the logical arguments and proof from afaq, external world, and Anfus, the internal world, which we also find in the Quran from Surah number 41, ayat 53. And his aim of solving these questions was to alleviate the souls of sincere believers through true knowledge, or we can say hakikati knowledge in the technical term. Therefore, it is interesting how the name of this book, Nasir Khisraw's Knowledge in Liberation, connects with his goal of liberating the souls of the Imam's followers. And another interesting point which Professor Parvez wrote in this book is that, which I quote, medieval thinkers such as Nasir Khisraw and Nasiruddin Tusi perceived themselves not merely as theologians and spokesmen of their own religious community, but as global thinkers, proffering philosophical wisdom and spiritual therapy for humanity. So that would be very interesting to reflect on. So these are the questions I will be covering in today's presentation. And please note that the question numbers are mentioned according to their sequence in the book. So part 1 is about cosmogony on whether God has body, and part 2 is on ontology, on the soul's existence and self-subsistence. And the question would be on the definition of substance. And part 3 is on physics, on the and spiritual world. Part 4 is on theology. And part 5 is on theodicy. And some of the questions we will discuss is on the liberation of the soul, on the meaning of the straight path, on free will and responsibility. Let us look at some of these terms which we have to understand. Cosmogony, which is the branch of science that deals with the origin of the universe, especially the solar system. And then we have part 2, ontology, which is the branch of metaphysics dealing with the nature of being. Physics, as we all are aware of, which is a science that deals with matter and energy and their interaction. And theology is the study of religion. And theodicy, the meaning of theodicy is defense of God's goodness and omnipotence in view of the existence of evil. So let's come to question 4 on whether God has a body. And question is, oh brother, you ask the anthropomorphists say that God is a body, and to support this view, they argue that whatever activity we see in this world is all done by bodies, whether there be the diverse work which people do or other things which animals do, but man is unable to do. For example, the bee makes a beehive out of mud and honey from flowers, or silk is made from worms which turn mulberry leaves into silk, or asters which make pearls from rainwater. Pir Nasir Khusro further gives another example of date palm, which makes date from dust and water. And every plant produces a thing which is different from its form. All these in their reality are bodies. And when the wise see such craft sanat, they testify that it is created by a powerful agent. To further summarize this question, Pir made an argument that God has a body or not, and that we will see how in a logical flow, Pir has provided a response to it. So Pir Nasir Khusro explains that in this world, none of the single body is a maker, because the only maker in reality is the soul. And body is actually like its instrument. Then Hakim Nasir Khusro explains 3 levels of soul: vegetative soul, Royanda; animal soul, Khoranda; rational soul, Goyanda. Pir makes a connection by giving an example that animal is a genus, and its species are birds, reptiles, and wild beasts. Similarly, the universal soul is a genus, which is the source of vegetative soul, animal soul, and rational soul. So among these souls, rational soul, Goyanda, is sublime because of intellect. Likewise, universal soul, Bikulli Khish, is higher because of its receiving knowledge, Danish Pazir, from the universal intellect. Therefore, Hakim Nasir Khusro discusses a simple example of a carpenter Who knows how to produce a door? He can conceive it within himself without any time, instrument, and mediation of a body. The whole design of making the chair is in his mind in a subtle form, which is not visible to the people. But when he puts his design to physical form, then it is visible to the people. Similarly, P. Nasir Khusro explains that we can see the movement of stars, sun, and the moon is due to the universal soul, but it is not visible to the people. And his soul does not need a body to produce it. So Pir wrote, thus, it is established that the maker of the world is the one who is not perceptible to the senses. And since whatever the senses cannot perceive is other than body, it is clear that the maker of this world is not a body. Let's come to this question 9 on the soul's existence and self-subsistence. Question is, oh brother, you ask about the soul. Does it exist or not? And is it self-subsistent, or does its subsistence depend on the body? Is it from among substances or from accidents? What is the proof that the soul is a substance and self-subsistent? When we do not find it without body, and without a body, no action should come forth from it, demonstrate the proof that we may know. We look at the response. Hakim bin Nasir Khusro explains that bodies are alive because of the soul. And we see the movement of bodies is caused from either inside or from outside. Examples of outside movement would be a wind moves a tree, water moves a water wheel and a boat. An example of inside movement, which would be voluntarily, and our human heartbeat, blood circulation, opening and shutting of our eyelid. So these inside movement would be inactive if human soul leaves the body. Hakim bin Nasir Khusro concludes that it is clear that it is the soul which keeps our bodies alive, and that the souls of our bodies subsist by themselves. And the soul is a substance and self-subsistent, the mover and keeper alive of the body. We learn according to Sayyidina Pir Nasir Khusro, soul is a substance which runs the human body, as he wrote in his Divan, which I quote, while your heavy body sleeps, what is it that remains seeing, speaking, and awake? It is a substance that lives and learns, by which this car has become living and speaking. We can move on to next question, question number 16. On the physical and spiritual world. Oh brother, you ask, what is the meaning of alam, world, and what is that entity to which this name applies? How should we describe the world in its reality, and how many worlds are there? Explain so that we may recognize. P. Nasir Khusro explains two types of worlds, the lower physical or dense, which we perceive through our five external senses, such as seeing, listening, and other senses. However, the higher spiritual and subtle world we can perceive by activating our spiritual senses. And I try to put it in this form of chart, so that would be easier to memorize. Hakim bin Nasir Khusro argues in this question that one who can know that there is a world other than this physical or dense world, how would one can know? Then he connects this explanation by examining the two main elements of human beings, the soul and intellect, which we do not find together in any other creature in this world. Of course, we do find soul in other creatures like animals, but that it would be in a different level. And as this question would be easier for us to understand, as Dr. Sahib and Rashida Saiba, they are taking us through this course of what is soul. So we look into that in this particular argument. Then P discusses that the entire world is encompassed by the attribute of being either beneficent or beneficiary, by giving the example of the spears and the plants above are beneficent and the elements below are beneficiaries. So this example is also found in the world of religion, where the intellect is the beneficent and the soul is the beneficiary. And with that, we see this notion of pair and this concept of pair from this Quranic verse, Surah 36, Ayat 36, where Allah says, purified is he who created pairs of all things, of what the earth grows, and of themselves, of what they do not know. So in this reference, Hakim P. Nasir Khusro also highlights the concept that everything we see in this world is in pair. As Sayyidina P. Nasir Khusro provides the example of the first physical pair is Adam and Eve, and connects it in the world of religion as the spiritual pair of the Natik and the Asas, in which the Natik represents as male and Asas represents as the female. So we can move on to this next question, and this question number 5 on knowledge and ignorance. Oh brother, you ask, what is the cause of man's indeterminate state ALWAAZish between animality and angelicity? And what is the meaning of iqab, punishment, and how should it be known? Explain. In this question, P. Nasir Khusro argues that man's indeterminate state is due to his ignorance and inability to utilize his external senses, such as eyes, ears, and others in acquiring true knowledge. P. Nasir Khusro quotes this Quranic verse from Surah number 6, ayat number 95, where God says, and indeed you have come to us alone, as we created you at first, and you have left behind what we bestowed on you. Hakim Nasir Khusro explains that God bestowed us with these physical senses to acquire knowledge. And if one does not do so, then he gained nothing in the spiritual world. He also quotes another important Quranic verse where God says, and whoever is blind in this world, he is also blind in the world hereafter, and far away from right away. From Surah number 17, ayat 72, this verse referred to the spiritual blindness, not in the physical sense, because if someone is blind by birth, then it would not make any sense. P said in his divan regarding to actualize our spiritual senses in acquiring knowledge, he said, look with the inner eye at earth's hiddenness, for the outer eye cannot see it. What is the hiddenness of these worlds? The noble ones see the esoteric, but not the exoteric. These verses inspire us to utilize our physical senses, such as heart, ears, eyes, and tongue, in gaining hakikati knowledge, which will help us to develop Chashme Basirat, the inner eye, as we learned through these global lectures, these two terms, Basarat and Basirat, Basarat in a physical sense and Basirat in the spiritual sense. Hakim bin Nasir Khusro emphasizes that one who is ignorant is actually in iqab or punishment because he has fallen behind in the rank of humanity. The goal of a man in this life is to become wise by gaining hakikati knowledge. And if one does not do so, then he falls into the path of animality. Peer highlights that if man actualizes his physical senses by acquiring true knowledge and following the path of the Prophet and the Imam of the time, then when his soul leaves the body, he will retain the faculties of his spiritual senses in the subtle world hereafter. And Hakim Nasir Khusro also yearned for this inner sense, as he wrote in his Diwan, which I quote, "If in this world I cannot see what my place in that world is, what use have I of my eyes?" Maulana Hazrat Imam alayhi salam also mentions in his speech regarding acquiring knowledge from our surrounding and not to fall into the path of animality. The Imam said, the divine intellect, Akli Kul, both transcends and informs the human intellect. It is this intellect which enables man to strive towards two aims dictated by the faith, that he should reflect upon the environment Allah has given him and that he should know himself. It is the light of intellect which distinguishes the complete human being from the human animal, and developing that intellect requires free inquiry. Next question is question 26 on the liberation of the soul. And it is, "Oh brother, you ask, what is the means of human liberation? And what does the word sawab, reward, mean? Explain so that we may know." Earlier we learned about iqab, punishment, and here we will learn about sawab, reward. Hakim bin Nasir Khusro discusses in his response that the messenger who was sent by the universal soul with the tight spiritual help of the universal intellect, the Prophet gave people the tanzil, revelation, which consists of exoteric and general aspect of Shariat, religious law. And before we look into these two terms of Shariat and Hakikat, the Tanzil and Ta'wil, here in this slide, we have this concept of knowledge and action, how the connection of knowledge and action is together in reference of Shariat. When we follow the Shariat, and then our action is to follow that exoteric form and get to the level of Ta'wil, the level of Hakikat. And we come to this idea of Tanzil and Ta'wil, which I would try to bring it up over here. So to bring that, the Prophet gave people the Tanzil revelation, which consists of the exoteric and the general aspect of the Shariat, religious law. And they commanded people to put these religious law into a practice. And those who put Shariat into practice reach the science of Ta'wil, esoteric interpretation. And there is a condition here. In order to get to the level of Ta'wil, one has to accept and understand the Tanzil. And two other points is to work means to make the subtle into dense, and to know the work means to make the dense into subtle. So first, the universal soul condenses the subtle knowledge within itself in the form of this dense world. And at last, the messenger makes the dense into subtle through their teaching. Sayyidina Nasir Khusro further explains inner meaning of these two technical terms of tanzil and ta'wil, which we discussed earlier. And by using an example of ladder, tanzil means to make the subtle into dense, and ta'wil means to make the dense into the subtle. Why this example of scaling ladder used? It is for a believer to ascend from the bottom rung of the ladder to its top so that he may reach heaven. A first step of the ladder represents the tanzil and the shariat. By climbing on this path step by step, one can reach at the top of the ladder, which is the science of ta'wil or heaven. And this Quranic verse, Surah 35, Ayat 10, which says, to which ascend the good word and good deed lifts them up. Which we can understand in this context that the messengers give spiritual knowledge to people through speech and concrete parables. And when man practices Shariat, he can understand the science of Ta'wil. Pir Nasir Khusro explains that by obeying the command of the Imam of the time, a soul returns to the higher world, and he mentions that the word sawab, reward, means that when the soul is obedient, it becomes wise and returns to its origin and reaches the world of wisdom. Also, it liberates from the potential hell of this ignorant world. And Hakim Pir Nasir Khusro explained this concept of paradise and hell also in his diwan. Next question is on the meaning of the straight path. Oh brother, you ask, what is the sirat, path, way, bridge? It is said that the sirat is stretched over hell, that it is thinner than an hair and sharper than a sword, and all people have to cross it. The fortunate one cross it and reach paradise, whereas the unfortunate ones fall from it into hell. Explain so that we may know. This one is also an interesting question. In response, we learned that in Arabic and Persian, the word sirat means path, as we recite in the first part of the dua in Surah Fatiha, Sirat al-Mustaqim, and guide us on the straight path or right path. Hakim Nasir Khusro poses a question. Who are those individuals who would guide us on this path of the soul? He provided his response by quoting Quranic verse, Surah number 4, ayat 69. All who obey God and the messenger are in the company of those upon whom God has bestowed his favors, the prophets, Nabiyyin, the truthful, Siddiqeen, the witness, Shuhada, and the righteous, Salihin. And this reference is from Surah 4, ayat 69. Pir Nasir Khusro explains that by the truth he means the legatees who provide the ta'wil of the Shariat and the book to the people. By witness are meant the true imams, as they are the witness of God among the people. And by righteous are meant their proofs, because the betterment of the souls of people is due to them. Here, Allama Nasiruddin Nasir Hunzai Sahib quotes a saying of Imam Jafar Sadiq in reference to understand who is Sirat-e-Mustaqim. And we learn that Sirat-e-Mustaqim is a personality, as Allama Sahib quoted Imam Jafar Sadiq, which I quote. Imam, the speaking path, it is reported from Imam Jafar Sadiq alayhi salam that he said, the straight path is the commander of the faithful Ali. Also, it is reported from Imam Zainul Abidin that he said, we are the doors of God and we are the straight path, so that the people of faith are led to God. And another reference, you can also reflect on it later on. Hakim bin Nasir Khusro wrote in Diwan regarding the concept of paradise and hell. And according to Wise, sleep is non-existence and wakefulness is life. Know that the heart of a wise person is paradise and that of an ignorant one is hell. So here Hakim Nasir Khusro discusses a unique aspect of Sirat by connecting it with paradise and hell. Pir explains that Tanzil or Zahir represents to the left hand, and Tawil or Batin represent to the right hand. Hakim Nasir explains that if man practices the Shariat without understanding its Tawil, then he makes himself into an animal and he climbs towards the left hand, and he falls into hell from the Sirat. But if he acquires esoteric knowledge, but does not practice the Shariat while claiming angelicity, he inclines toward the right hand and falls into hell from the Sirat. So it is very interesting to learn this idea or this concept and this terminology of Sirat. We learn from his teaching that for a true Momin to stay on a straight path and Sirat is to practice both Shariat and to understand its esoteric meaning. And in the context of our Ismaili religion, in Ismaili Tariqa, the Imam of the time guides us according to the changing circumstances. And our Jamaati practices, we still have some portion of Shariat. And as a true believer move from Shariat to Tariqat, Tariqat to Haqiqat, the portion of Shariat reduces, and our form of Shariat is we can see and we practice in the form of our rituals, but we need to understand the esoteric aspect of those rituals which we perform in the Jamaat Khana. So in that context, we can connect this idea. Another key point is about lifelong learning and humility, humbleness. As Pir explains, whoever says that he does not need to learn and claims to know better than one superior to him has falsely claimed angelicity. And he who says that whatever knowledge God has given him is enough for him has agreed to remain in animality. That is another concept in reference to gaining more knowledge and to be humble. This last question says, which is on free will and responsibility. Oh, brother, you ask whether man is determined or free. In what he does, if he is determined, then whatever he does is being done by God. In which case, why does punishment become, in this case, why does punishment become necessary? If he is free, then can he do something which God does not like, thus necessitating that he prevails over God? So when this question was asked to Imam Jafar Sadiq alayhi salam, he replied, God is more just than to determine someone to disobey him and then punish him for it. Then they asked him if man can do what he wishes. He said, God's power is greater than one's transgressions in his kingdom. Then they asked him what the position of man is in this world. He said, it is between two positions in which he is neither determined nor free. With the position of man between animality and angelicity, as P. Nasir Khusro explains that the carnal soul, and in the Quranic reference, Nafsi Amara, represents the animal aspect of humans, and rational soul is to his angelic aspect. Hakim bin Nasir Khusro discusses that in case of an animal which has only carnal soul, and is determined to disobey, while an angel has a rational soul who is determined to obey God. Therefore, punishment and reward are not applicable to both animals uh, and reward to the angels. However, man's position is in between of animality and angelicity. He is not determined by God, but human beings have given intellect to choose between good and bad, or ethical and unethical actions. SP writes, he has also endowed it with a sense of modesty and shame sharam, which does not allow humans to act as animals do. Pir quotes this important Quranic verse to encourage the true believers of the Imam to actualize their inner senses and not to ignore them and not to fall into this category of animality. As this Quranic verse, Surah 7, Ayat 179, which Allah says, they have hearts but understand not with them. They have eyes but perceive not with them. They have ears, but they hear not with them. They are like cattle. Nay, rather, they are further astray. Those they are the heedless. And in the next slide, we will look at how Imam Sultan Muhammad Shah alayhi salam, in his chapter, The Islam of Religion of My Ancestor, Imam talked about this concept of predestination and this question which we are discussing. Imam wrote, I quote, divine justice and are convinced that the solution of the great problem of predestination and free will is to be found in the compromise that God knows what man is going to do, but that man is free to do it or not. In conclusion, it is interesting to read all the prayers which Hakim Nasir Khusro had blessed us with. In the end of each question, you would find a prayer, and I would read some of his prayers that will be a source of inspiration to read this book. Attain so that you may know, recognize so that you may achieve salvation, recognize so that you may be liberated, ask so that you may know, comprehend so that you may be liberated, study so that you may know, recognize so that you may be liberated. Some of the key words: recognize, liberation, would inspire us to read this book and to continue our journey of acquiring spiritual knowledge. And in this connection, it also reminds me Maulana Imam Sultan Muhammad Shah's Farman on Usul-e-Din. In Usul-e-Din, we have this great concept of spiritual elevation. And when I was studying this book, it was also interesting that how Hakim P. Nasir Khusro offered his appreciation to Imam of his time in some of his verses from his Diwan. And I would quote a couple of verses from his Diwan. Hakim P. Nasir Khusro wrote, "It did not witness spiritual healing from any knowledge except from the dawa of the Prophet's progeny. You must seek wisdom from the presence of the Prophet's son, pure and unsullied as silver from tashbih and ta'til." It is also challenging to read this book, and because it consists of philosophy and theology. Therefore, I have to read a couple of times to internalize some of the key concepts, terminologies, and how it is connected. And I have given references that I've used for this presentation. And in the end, I would like to offer my gratitude to all the participants for their presence today and listening to me so patiently. And I also would like to thank Zebunisa Farid Momin and Rosina Momin for their great support in preparing this presentation. And my humble submission to all our Ilmi friends and all the spiritual brothers and sisters on the conference line today is to please read this book, and you will be enlightened by how Peer has used examples from the external world, afaq and anfus, and so many Quranic verses Peer has used. We will be amazed that Peer was well versed in so many Quranic verses, and in also the saying of the Imams, and they received this ta'id from the Imam, as Hakim bin Nasir Khusro mentioned in his writing, that he was known as a theologian and a philosopher, but he preferred to be known as the follower of the Imam. Thank you so much. May Mullah help all of us and enlighten us with his Nurani Zahiri Batini Didar. Thank you, Yali Madad.
Marhaba, marhaba. Bless you and inspire you more and more to deliver such lectures.
Alhamdulillah, very good review in this book. So, of course, that was not possible to cover all of them in 1 hour only. And Riyaz has given us a very good overview, and now it is up to us to follow this up with our own effort to study the book. Okay, so now Riyaz will allow questions and answers now. So let's ask for any questions, either through the chat or by raising your hand. Somebody would like to see the slide prior to the one of Maulana Sultan Shah, please. Right, okay, this one, yeah. This is a Quranic ayat, 179. It's very well known. You will find this mentioned in all our Dari's books. Okay. Thank you. Okay. So we can take that away. Are there any other questions or requests? Okay. Is there any Urdu translation in process of Nasir Khisraw'S books apart from Wajuddin?
Yeah, it has been translated into Urdu by, I think, late John Elia, the younger brother of...
Gushayish Rahayish, right?
No, this Gushayish Rahayish of Reis Amruhi.
Yes, I hope that was clear. Dr. Saib is saying that there is an Urdu translation of Gushayish Rahayish by John Elia, who used to be an employee of the Ismailia Association of Pakistan, and he was a younger brother of the famous poet and a journalist of the Dawn, Urdu, Reis Amrohi. Younger brother.
Jung, the Daily Jung.
No, also Dawn. Now they still continue with Dawn. Yeah, Jung and Dawn. Both. Okay, we have a, Ferial has raised her hand. So please ask Ferial.
Yali Madad, Dr. Fakir Muhammad and Rashida Sahiba and Riyaz sir. I just have a comment. Thank you very much for explaining this book because it's never easy to understand. Those talimat books with the talim, with the tawil in there. And especially when I start reading, I just fall asleep, but so it was very good summary. And now I'm very, excited to read the whole book. So thank you, Riyaz sir. And I am also thinking of a nazam connecting to this nazam of our Buzurgwar Allama Sahib. है दूर बहुत इल्मी सफर तेज चला चल पुर अमना है ये राह न डर तेज चला चल. So the ilmi safar is very far, and instead of walking now we have to run. So I just connected that with Riyaz's summary with the book that keep taking the knowledge and keep reading. And this whole life is to gain the knowledge. Hai umra gira maya fakta ilm ke khatir kar ilm ki raahon mein tez chala chal. So that's all I have to say, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Ferial, for that very positive comment and also for connecting things. Yes, you are quite right. You will find many echoes of Pir Nasir Khisraw in the works of Allama Nasiruddin Nasir Hunzai, because they both belong to the Central Asian tradition, which is the tradition of Pir Nasir Khisraw. Okay, we have a question from Sajid Ali. My question belongs to number 4, which was on Riyaz's presentation, that it says God has no body. But in our faith, we believe that God is embodied. Can you explain?
Well, the explanation is Allah is not incarnating or embodied. We can't say that, but it is a reflection. It is a zuhur, it is zuhurat. And therefore, Maulana Hazar Imam was asked by our leaders how we should introduce you to the public, that Maulana Hazar Imam said, you should introduce me like a mazhar. And the mazhar doesn't mean incarnation or embodiment. Rather, it is like the question of a mirror, and in mirror, there's a reflection of the sun. It is in this sense that Imam's body is like a mirror. And in that mirror, from throughout the history, even from the very before Hazrat Adam, there is no beginning and end as far as the creation is concerned, that the light of Nubuwwat and Imamat has continued through these mirrors.
Who are the manifestations. So I think what we need to understand here is that we don't think of God in a body in the way the Christians do, where they considered, the Farman of Maulana Hazar Imam in that precious James book, that Christians consider the body of God, of Jesus, to be God. We don't do that. So we are not talking about embodied in that sense. The way we say is that the nur of Allah is in 2 dimensions. It is absolute light, mujarrad, and it is nur mujassam because it comes in the form of a lamp. So it's a matter of reflection, a matter of manifestation. And for that also, the Maulana Sultan Shah's memoirs is very, very important, because look what he says. He says that the Shias have therefore always held that after the Prophet's death, divine power, guidance, and leadership manifested themselves in Hazrat Ali. Manifested, mazhar, okay? So I hope you have understood the different understanding of bodied and embodied, etc. Okay, we have a question from Nasir Jamal. Yes, when in the time of Natik and Asas, Natik is on the level of male because he is a projection or the manifestation of the universal intellect, and the Asas, that is Maulana Ali, was in the female role because he was a manifestation of the universal soul. And there is a very, very well-known, unanimous, all Muslims accept this hadith, that the Holy Prophet said, "Oh Ali, you and I are the parents of this community." So parents is a pair, father and mother. So the intellect, the Natik is the father, male, and the Asas, who is the soul, is the mother. And then when that time finishes and we enter the time of manifest imamah, then the imam is the father and the pir or the hujjat is the mother. I hope that is clear. Yes, now, yes, we can look at Khayal's. Khayal, your hand is up. Go ahead.
Yeah, Limited. I have a question from question 26, I believe it is, from the book Knowledge and Liberation. So in there,
we are show it.
I only caught half of the presentation, so I'm not sure if that was on the screen or not.
Okay,
But,
yeah, so just make sure. Yes, 26 then, yeah. No, this is 16, 26, 25. I don't think so, right? Okay. Oh no, on the liberation of the soul. Here we are.
Okay.
You missed this part?
I might think I caught some of it. I'm not sure if the exact part that I'm looking for is it was on the slide or not, but it's like referring back to the book itself, and where Pir Nasir Christos says he's speaking about becoming like the universal soul. When the soul becomes, when someone puts the Firman of the messenger and obeys the Imam of the time, he becomes like the universal soul. And when his soul leaves the body, it returns to the higher world, where it becomes sovereign over this world and rules it. So my question, I was just wondering if it maybe shed a little bit of light on what does it mean to say to become sovereign over this world and to rule it? What is the nature of a soul who becomes like the universal soul, returns to the universal soul? Maybe if something can be said about what does it mean to say to rule over this world?
Yeah, what is the meaning of to become sovereign over this soul when a soul purifies through the guidance of Imam Prophet and merges with the universal soul? Then in the next world, they become sovereign over this world.
So actually, although I have translated it, but I haven't read it
Again.
recently, so I have to read it again. What is the exactly in that text? Sorry.
Yeah, so did you catch that Khayal, that Fakir Sahib is so he's so engrossed in working on what he did, he has not read Gushayish for a long time, right? This is, it was published in 98, so it's many years ago.
Yes, and inshallah, next session, inshallah,
yeah. He'll find out and he will refresh his memory and then he will give you an answer. Please remind him. Okay, Khayal?
Sure, thank you very much.
Okay, Shanaz, you have your hand up.
Alimadat. So the previous explanation that you gave, which was very beautiful, that the Natik is the universal intellect, that's man. Asas is playing the female role, Hazrat Ali alayhi salam, which is the woman. So in part 5, when we pray Ya Ali Ya Muhammad the 11 times or the 33 times, we in our heart, like, of course, I say, oh, father and mother of my soul, oh, mother and father of my soul. So that's right? They are the father and the mother of our soul, right? The parents of our soul.
Absolutely, absolutely, because the light which was in Nabi Sahib and which was in Hazrat Ali is now today in the Imam of the time, yeah? So yes, you can imagine that would not be wrong. This is part of the Islamic literary histories in the Hadith literature, right? Yeah.
Shukran.
Okay. Somebody, kya hai ye, Ana?
Ana wa anta ya Ali.
Yeah, Abwab. Yeah.
Abu wa Ummul Mominin.
Yes, Adnan has given that in a quote? Urdu, yeah, Arabic here.
Yeah, well, generally instead of Abu and is Abawan or Abawain. And when it comes in possessive case, then the noon is dropped. Then it becomes only Abawa. Yani ana wa anta Abawa Abawal Mominin or Abawa Hazihil Ummah. So it has two forms.
Okay, we have a hand up from Gulzar now. Malali Mother.
मैम लास्ट के जो प्रेयर का जो स्लाइड थी ना, so in that you know you will be salvation, then you know you will be liberated, then you know then you will be recognized. So ये तीनों चीजें एक है या there is a like difference or दर्जा? So can you please explain, ma'am?
Can you bring that slide up where towards the end? Yes, because it's very difficult to remember all of them, right? Yes, I think that one. Yes, attain so that you may know, recognize so that you may, okay, where are we? This one, yeah? Recognize so that you may achieve salvation, recognize so that you may be liberated, comprehend, understand so you may be liberated, study so that you recognize and be liberated, ask, asking questions is important, learn so that you be, these are all the words which have, when you look at them as one, they all have the same meaning, don't they? Salvation means liberation, and salvation and liberation are not possible without recognizing your own soul. Man arafa nafsahu faqad arafa rabba. He or she who recognizes his or her soul recognizes God. So all these words, you can see that, you know, Nasir is bringing in some words like attain, recognize, ask, study, etc., in order to achieve something, which is salvation, liberation, and recognition, ma'rifat. Recognition means ma'rifat, yeah, which is in this hadith of Nabi Sahib and Maulana Ali is called man arafa. Arafa, recognize. He or she who recognizes his or her soul recognizes the Lord. Okay, so yeah.
Thank you, Mama. Thank you, Shukamala.
Okay. Any more questions? One more new message somewhere. Okay. Updated time. No, we have only information about updating of time, which you will know from the website. Okay, and the when we send out the notice as well. Yeah. These changing of times don't coincide in Europe and in Britain is always different from the rest of Europe as well. So it causes complications, but inshallah, you will all be informed. Okay. Any more questions? I think we have had good series, but if anybody else has anything burning to ask, do so now. And please do try to listen to Riyaz's recording and look at his presentation once I've had a look at it, and it'll be posted to the website. And you are welcome to keep reading and learning and knowing and asking all the time. Like Riyaz very appropriately said, this is what Imam means by when he says lifelong learning. Okay. All right. No more questions, no more hands up. So in that case, we will all thank Riyaz for his hard work in presenting a very clear presentation today. And we will thank him for motivating us to read this book, inshallah. And thank you for questions which will enable Dr. Saib to revisit his work I would like to share with you, because I also share this small apartment with him, that all those years ago when he was working on this book, and this book has been created from a single manuscript.
Yes.
And this single manuscript is from Turkey, from the Topkapi Museum. And it was written, handwritten by a Turkish person who didn't really know Farsi, it appears. And therefore, I would like to share with you my own personal experience that Dr. Sahib corrected 600 mistakes. And when he does that, because it is by the help of the Imam of the time, for each mistake, he would go into sajda on the carpet. So he corrected 600 mistakes in that. And of course, you can still not be sure that that is exactly what P. Namdar wrote, okay?
From his books.
Exactly. And he had to compare with Nasir Khisraw'S works, other works, and, do they say the same thing or are they worlds apart? So it was a very, very big job. And maybe the more of you read it, the more of you then will realize that this is a labor of love for the Imam. Okay. Thank you, everybody. And Ya Ali Madad, Ya Ali Madad, and inshallah, see you all next Sunday when we are going to actually devote a lecture on the content of Wajuddin, but only two specific aspects of it, the pillars of Islam and how to understand them in the Nasir's time and now in this time. And we are going to look at the principle of the religious hierarchy, Hudud-e-Din. So Dr. Sahib is going to deliver this lecture in Urdu. Inshallah, I will do a translation in English. And that is an additional lecture we are inserting because we feel that that needs to be explained. Okay, so inshallah, see you all next Sunday. Ya Ali Madad, and may you all remain in Maula's Nurani Panna.
Ameen.
Mola Ali Madad.
Ya Ali Madad. Thank you, Dr. Sahib.
Ya Ali Madad.
Ya Ali Madad, Ya Ali Madad.
Yeah.